it's not just about heart rate variability. There's a nervous system also involved.
So in today's video, we sit down with Corey Beasley, who is head coach at fightcampconditioning.com. Corey works with a lot of high-level fighters, including some in the UFC, and has a wealth of knowledge when it comes to strength and conditioning as it relates to combat sports. So be sure and hit this video a like, and if you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe and sit back and enjoy.
Yeah, my name is Corey Beasley. I'm the founder of fightcampconditioning.com. I've been a strength coach and trainer and stuff for about 23 years, working in a variety of different environments, from small studios to big health clubs to, owning a couple gyms and doing that type of stuff as well. I started Fight Camp Conditioning with the idea as we were rebranding our second gym. I decided I didn't want to drop the combat sports thing completely, but anybody that owns a gym would understand. I also didn't want to be the man having to create all the content for everything all the time. Mm-hmm. One, because it's just way too much work. And two, because I don't think I'm the only person that knows everything, right? So there's a lot of people doing a lot of great stuff. So we created fightcampconditioning.com as a way to showcase strength coaches that work. It's not only strength coaches, but health professionals that work with combat athletes. So there's a lot of people doing a lot of great stuff, and that's kind of how it came about. So
fantastic. And obviously we can link up your Instagram and things, but is there anywhere else where people can really get to you and see what you have to offer?
Mainly is Instagram right now, at Fight Camp Conditioning. And if they go to the website, fightcampconditioning.com, that's probably the best place to start. Obviously there's YouTube and Facebook and all that other stuff, but those two will get you where you need to be.
Ah, super, yeah. So I had a little look at your Fighters 5 document there that you have on the website today, and I think there's some great stuff there. So I think that would be actually a great place to start.
Cool.
So do you want to just kind of like walk us through the layout of that and the idea behind it?
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing when you're talking about strength and conditioning for fighters is that everybody's different. And, what the mistake I think a lot of people make is they'll look at the current champion or the flavor of the month, whatever that is, and the person that is, and everybody wants to mimic what they're doing. The hard part with that is that they have absolutely no idea what that person's done up to that point to prepare themselves for the exercises they're doing, the intensity that they're working at, the volume that they're working at, and much less the rest of their schedule, right? So most combat athletes, their schedule is pretty intense, and they do a lot of skill training. The skill training is, pretty hard on the body, to say the least. And as a strength coach, you have to really be dialed in with the skill training that they're doing, not only the type of skill, but the intensity and volume, like how much, how hard they're doing it. And that's become one of the biggest things that, at least the top trainers and stuff that I'm talking with, that's the biggest thing that they're helping these guys with, is organizing their schedule so that they understand, the ebb and flow of how a week should work, and they need to listen to their body. And you're nobody's a superhero. You can't spar and kill yourself every single day and expect to last. So that's number one, is just helping people kind of understand the stress that these guys are going through, and then more importantly, how to organize their week so that they can continue training for long term, so they can become better. A lot of guys are just smashing themselves trying to be tough and just get tired. But I think that's kind of going by the wayside, because they're realizing real quick, you get one ACL reconstruction or a shoulder or a back or something like that, man, you wise up pretty quick. So, the Fighters 5 book was just kind of my idea of, or not my idea, but a lot of ideas that I've gathered from people over the years, and kind of organized into a system of varying intensities to help guys prepare for fights and stay healthy. The 5 elements are one, is just basically questions that I ask guys when they come in. But number one, are you healthy? And if how's your feet? How's your ankles? How's your knee, your hips, your back, your shoulders, all that type of stuff. And a lot of guys, they walk in with a lot of beat up stuff, right? They got everybody's got a laundry list of ailments. So,
and I think that's certainly like part of martial arts traditionally, isn't it? You got to go hard and go at it and be tough, and you almost need to live with those. But that's kind of these days people are really realizing that you need to train smart.
Sure, for sure. Everybody's got something, right? If you've competed, if you have trained, you know, anything like from jiu-jitsu to boxing to whatever, everybody's got their thing, right? So what traditionally, like, you know, like myself, you know, I've torn my knees, you know, shoulders, wrists, fingers, you know, all kinds of stuff over the years. And you have to, it's not that you need to be weak. I think that people tend to think like, if I'm not going 1,000% every single day, that they're weak. And that's just not the case. It's just a matter of, you know, if they're not healthy, we got to address those things. And maybe it's with your strength coach, but maybe it's also with some type of therapist or manual therapist or massage person or somebody, just depending on what it is. But let's just nip that in the bud so we don't have to deal with that for 5 years.
Yeah.
Right.
Just get that foundation nice and solid, I guess. Yeah.
It's just solid, making sure everything's functioning right. And then we can move into, are you in shape? Right. If you're not in shape, you know, you're going to have a real hard time competing. So, you know, a lot of that can be muscular and cardiovascular endurance type work where we're, you know, building an aerobic foundation so that they are capable of, you know, working for longer periods of time. A lot of GPP work where we're just kind of slowly introducing some lower intensity work, but for longer durations to kind of build that base. And then from there, we can work on, are you strong? And then we go into traditional strength stuff a lot of times where you squat and you hinge and you push and you pull and you carry stuff. And, you know, that's typically where a lot of the powerlifting, you know, bodybuilding, all that type of stuff that's dominated the marketplace for 30, 40 years, you know, that's kind of where that part's at. And I think that's where everybody traditionally wants to start.
Yeah.
You know, they want big muscles and they want to be jacked and they want to be strong and they want to do all this stuff. But if you don't have a good foundation, you're shit out of luck. You're going to have problems because of it. And then from there, we can kind of, you know, there's varying intensities in all these different stages. But from there, you know, you think, are you athletic? And athleticism is not the power lifter, right? It's a piece of it, right? But, you know, if you think of somebody that's athletic or explosive, you know, it's not traditionally, you know, they're moving in all directions. They're fluid, they're fast, they're quick. You know, that's what highlight reels are made of, is that kind of stuff. And that's where it's like, you know, the plyometrics and jumps and throws and, you know, that type of stuff kind of comes into play. But again, that's towards that, you know, if you got a scale and the scale's from here to here, man, you better start at the start line and kind of build things up. Yeah. Even if you're an elite athlete, because from my experience dealing with a lot of high level athletes in a lot of different combat sports, just because they're talented or successful at their sport doesn't mean that they are as experienced in the weight room. And from my experience dealing with guys from all over the world, they're not. A lot of people aren't, right? They might be a black belt, but they might be a white belt in the weight room. So we have to, you know, adjust for that for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting because like one of the most common things that we get asked, obviously Taekwondo is kicking dominant a lot of the time. So everybody wants to know the secret to kicking fast and how do you kick faster. And just as you said, that's on the higher scale of things. There's a lot of things you got to cover on the baseline first before you even look at that.
Yeah. Like if I was thinking about my brother did Taekwondo his whole life. So I wrestled, he did Taekwondo. So he'd kick me a couple times and I'd take him down and beat him up. So it was, but from even from a kicking standpoint, right? Depending if somebody's really dominant on one side, they're going to develop, you know, some differences from right to left. They might have different problems than a guy that wrestles, and you need to adjust for that. And it's also about when you're going to compete and peak versus when you're going to just train. You can't be 100% all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and if we kind of just dig a little bit into a few of those, I think what's interesting in the first one, like about being healthy as well, is the whole idea of like outside stresses. That might be something that people wouldn't actually consider, but you know, the whole idea of everything coming together to just make you trainable as such. Like, are you coming in there with pressure and stress from outside as well? That's also something that people don't really think of.
No, and you feel it, right? If you do it for long enough, you understand what I'm talking about. But we're talking for people that are listening, it's just a matter of your family life, your friends, your personal life, how you sleep, how you eat, your lifestyle habits. You know, if people go into a pub, you know, and they still want to train the next week and they're not quite feeling right, it's like, dude, I mean, all these little things add up. Everything is, you know, there's a lot of potential stresses that are outside the gym that have a massive impact on how we adapt, how we recover, how we do those types of things. So it's a massive deal to take into account all these different things. And traditionally they're things, if you do hire a good coach, you're going through this stuff. Like when my guys are warming up and stuff like that, I was like, all right, cool. How's your week? You know, what'd you do yesterday?
Yeah.
You know, how you feeling? Typically, if somebody's in the doghouse or feeling like crap, you know what I mean? You know it. You could see it all over their face.
Yeah.
So, hey, man, how you feeling? What's going on? Are you doing all right? And that's when that stuff will come out, right? You know, they're pissed off. I tweaked my knee, or I was fighting with my wife, or whatever it was. You know, it does make it makes a huge difference, and you need to adjust if it becomes too out of control, right?
Definitely. And I think one thing that I was looking at with the idea of staying in shape is, for us, our bouts would be 2 minutes with a minute break in between.
Yeah.
And that's how it would be for us. And I like the way you talk about like metrics and things like that, and getting evidence of improvements, because of course that is going to help with your confidence and give you that boost to keep pushing and things like that as well, knowing that you're ready for it. I think that's a massive thing that was mentioned in your article there.
Yeah, of course. I mean, yeah, you have to take it into account. I mean, with the guys with the Duncan French and the guys at the UFCPI, they developed a manual that they put out. But even that was just talking about MMA. But even within MMA, they gave statistics between like a 125-pound fight and a heavyweight fight, and they're not even close. Like, the little guys will go typically like bursts of maybe 3 to 5 seconds, and they'll do that. The little guys will do that 4 to 5 times a minute. So it's an incredibly quick pace. I would imagine, you know, from just watching my brother compete in Taekwondo, it's incredibly fast, right? Versus a heavyweight, when they have maybe 1 to 2 bursts per minute. There's a lot of lumbering around, but when they go, it's frightening, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, those are different needs. They're different things that you got to consider when you're developing this type of stuff for guys.
Would you mind just like going into a little bit on the different systems and like the anaerobic and aerobic capacity and things like that? Like, obviously for a sport like us, it differs from MMA with 5 continuous rounds. Obviously you need to maybe have a little bit more of a threshold there to sustain that. So obviously the difference between sports in combat.
Yeah, and I just to be really upfront, I've never personally worked with a Taekwondo athlete, so I don't know the specifics. So if there's anybody out there listening that's like a Taekwondo expert, you can fill me in later. Right? I'd love to talk to you, but just from basics, right? I mean, there's basically 3 different energy systems. You got the aerobic system, which is kind of that low intensity, long duration type work. You have the lactic system, which is typically like 30 seconds to about 2 minutes. That's that kind of grinder where you just push. That's where a lot of combat athletes live in their skill training, because everybody likes to be tired, right? I personally don't hardly do any of that with my athletes, because I know they get so much of it with their skill training.
Okay.
Right? Now that can differ from you know, school to school or camp to camp. So, but I know for me that I stay away from it, because it's also very, very taxing on the body. The last one, that quick burst, that explosive system, is the alactic system, where, you know, sprinting and jumping and moving very, very explosively. But you can only do that for, you know, 8 to 12, maybe 15 seconds at the top, right? So depending, you know, I typically will work a lot if they're outside or far away from a competition. I'll work a lot more on the aerobic system and developing just overall strength. And then as they get closer to the fight, we start transitioning more into those quicker bursts and repeating those bursts of effort, so that they are capable of repeating those bursts in the skill world when they compete, right? So if they're 2 minutes, man, 2 minutes is fast.
Very quick, yeah.
Have
but 1 minute break as well, and you don't really get that full minute, because by the time the referee split you off and you go to your corner and then you come back out, it's really 45 seconds.
Sure.
You know, so they're short rounds.
So if you have a well-developed aerobic system, that's going to allow you to recover quickly or quicker from those bursts of effort. So it's not that it's, a lot of people want to do everything the same as their sport. They want everything to be, if I have to go 2 minutes, I should just do everything for 2 minutes. And it's like, it's a huge mistake, right? So we'll build that aerobic system out far away from competition so that when we do need to use those explosive bursts, the aerobic system helps those bursts recover quicker if you're efficient. So like you're saying, if you only got 45 seconds and you get your heart rate down to 135 beats per minute and your competitor is still hovering at like 145 because they don't have a good system, like you win. Because all you got to do is just drag that dude back into deep water and he'll fall apart. Yeah,
definitely. For us, we see like, would you think that the likes of long jogging and long runs and stuff, is that as we say transferable for a short sport, a bursting sport like ours, or is it more like the 25-minute MMA fights and 15 minutes?
I don't believe that any of those systems should be eliminated completely. They're not independent, right? Our body is one system that all functions together, and the more efficiently we can get that system to work as one, the better, right? So, but yeah, we have to take into account the demands of the sport. But things like the aerobic development, like I said, I would do that far away from competition. If it was closer to competition, I might just use it as a way to speed recovery on like an off day, like an active recovery type work, to help people just kind of like generate some blood flow, get some things moving. Maybe it clears their mind out a little bit, but it helps you recover fast, right? But the majority of your work getting close to, like a Taekwondo tournament or something like that, you would want to be working on power and power endurance for sure, so you're able to repeat those efforts. It becomes more specific, is more general when you're far away, and then it's more specific as you get closer, right? So you're ready to do it, right? But you're not always taxing your body the same way, so you don't wear yourself out.
We would work a lot on explosive repeats and things like that, being able to fire off shots when need be, and maybe when you're feeling that you're able to push through and have the muscles there as well behind you to be able to push through that little barrier,
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I want my guys to be able to, if they're fighting a 3-round fight, I want them to be able to go for 3 rounds, like as violent as possible, right? Yeah. And if we can achieve that,
would you train for more than that then? Would you train for, if it was a 3-round fight, would you train for the 4 or the 5 rounds?
Maybe at the most, and I would probably have them doing the most volume, probably 3 to 5 weeks out from their competition, because closer to that, once we start getting like 3 weeks out, 2 weeks out, 1 week out, they're also cutting weight. Yeah. You also have to account for that. So, I mean, you need to back off on the volume. We keep the intensity pretty high, but we back off on the volume quite a bit to allow them to, focus on their weight cut, focus more on their skill training. All the qualities and stuff like that we've built during the camp is pretty much, it's going to stick. It's not going anywhere. We'll give them little short doses of intensity, but very, very small, and allow them to cut weight, remain calm, stay focused on their skill, because skill is the most important, and then focus on the task at hand, right? I mean, our job is pretty much by the wayside at that, and then, help guide them if we need be with, other professionals that can help them with the weight cut or, stuff like that, because that's a whole nother bag of worms doing that, right? You can take a whole camp worth of work, and if you do the weight cut wrong, man, you can wipe it all off the table, so that's important.
Well, I wonder, what are your thoughts on general, like peak performance, even for, we say maybe junior athletes who don't maybe have to worry so much about a weight cut, but still in terms of their general skill training and things, what do you still think you need to back off on that, that volume, and just focus on higher intensity, shorter burst type of stuff for maybe a week?
I'm sorry, you're talking about when?
So we say maybe a week to 2 weeks leading up to the competition.
Yeah.
And they don't really have to worry about a weight cut or anything like that. But in terms of their skill training, would you still look to maybe like on their rounds and stuff like that to focus on short, explosive bursts? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, skill training and strength training
what everybody needs to understand is they are stress. They are all physical stress. It's the same. I mean, it's maybe not the same, but it's very, very similar, right? I mean, you're still physically stressing your system.
Yeah.
And it can stress you mentally, physically, like all that stuff comes into play. So any physical stress needs to stay high, like the high intensity work, fast fight speed, not really practicing so much. I mean, you're not going to learn anything in the next,
No,
2 weeks
definitely
before
not.
a competition. And if a coach is throwing new ideas at you 2 weeks out from a competition, it's like, ooh,
Yeah.
that's sketchy because it's not going to sink in. And right when you get punched in the face, like that's going to go out the window, man.
Yeah.
You're going right back to your
Revert back to
default
everything.
stuff,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the same. I would say all physical stress leading up to a competition 2 weeks out for sure is when you start that taper, when you start to reduce the volume, right? Again, the intensity stays high. It's all fight speed. It's very, very specific. And for some guys, there's no weight room stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And, I know with, some guys will say like, hey, the last, up to like 2 to 4 weeks before a fight can be all specific, 100% specific. Right. So, yeah, there's a little bit of wiggle room there, but the idea is the same. The principle is the same. Right?
Well, what would be your preference on the whole idea of strength training and conditioning? Well, maybe strength training, we say, getting close to that competition phase. Would you be looking to back off, or maybe just keep a little bit, or?
It depends. Like some guys really like to lift heavy and they feel good doing it, right? Other guys don't, right? So maybe, I personally will use a resistance called a versapulley. It's kind of a flywheel that allows you create force. And if you create a little bit of force, it'll create a little bit coming back the other way. So you have to fight it both directions. So it's a big one. And I can lighten the flywheel so that I'm moving faster leading up to it. And I'll typically transition into almost all of my resistance work is using that versapulley for the last like 3 or 4 weeks. It's all dynamic. It's all explosive. We're trying to move fast. We're watching the numbers so we know that they're moving at a quicker rate, a faster rate, and kind of go that direction. But again, it just depends on the individual.
Yeah.
And it really depends on how they feel, how's their weight cut, how's the rest of their week look with the volume of training and stuff like that they're doing. And then you have to adjust, a little bit. Everybody's a little bit different.
In terms of strength, then, how strong is strong enough, do you think, in terms of building that foundation to, obviously, you need a solid foundation to be able to explode off and things like that. For us, our sport isn't really dominant on, we call it like brute strength, like grappling or wrestling will be.
Right.
So there's no, like, a lot of exchanges where people think it comes down to strength. It's a lot of things like foot positioning and body positioning and stuff. So it doesn't really come down to brute strength, but of course strength is still a massive, massive part if you're looking to be powerful and explosive. So how strong is strong enough?
I think that it depends on from sport to sport, right? If skill is always number one. So if somebody has a higher level of skill, they don't need to be quite as strong as the opponent because they can outmaneuver them, so to speak, right? In a million different ways. Now, when you're talking about combat sports, I think the grapplers probably need to be the strongest because it's hands-on, judo, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, that type of stuff. And it is like constant fighting off your opponent physically, right? So strength is a massive component there. With boxing, it's not that it's not important. Don't get me wrong. It's absolutely important, but I think that it's less important for like a striking athlete because they don't have to physically fight off that other person as much, right? So how much is enough? It just depends on what exercise we're talking about, right? I mean,
if you're looking at maybe like the main compound movements, is there a level that you would like to be at before you look at like developing that explosiveness?
I don't ever say I'm not going to do any explosive type work before somebody hits a certain number on a barbell because I personally, it doesn't make any sense to me because, I have a 4-year-old son and guess what? He can jump off of You know, he can jump off. He jumps off walls that are like twice as high as he is.
Yeah,
And he
yeah.
lands. He doesn't jump very much, but he lands a ton, right?
Right.
Most people get hurt because they've lost that ability to absorb load or hit the brakes. And I've been watching my son grow up, and he doesn't jump much, but he lands a ton. So I think there's a big key there, you know?
Yeah.
But it just depends on what. I mean, you could still, I know a lot of people poo-poo on the old speed ladder, you know, different variations of jumps over hurdles, whether it's a small hurdle, big hurdles, boxes, you know, plyometrics. They're doing all this type of work, medicine balls. I think there's a lot we can always do to play in that and get them to be athletic and explosive and get them to control their own body and move and stuff like that. And I think that's a really good place to start. And then I've heard people say, like, yeah, you should be able to bench press 1.5 times your body. You should be able to squat 2 times your body, or deadlift, whatever. You know what I mean? And now I've also heard people talking about like that they don't worry so much about the weight on the bar, but they worry more about bar speed, because now technology is allowing us to measure bar speed. So, you know, if you do have 3 times your body weight on your back and you're squatting, but you're moving really slow, is that as transferable as like 1.5 times your body weight moving fast? Like,
I get you.
I don't know. There's a lot of scientists and stuff going back and forth on all this type of stuff now. So
Yeah.
I personally, I do pay attention. I try to get guys where they're strong, you know, in a variety of different ways, right? It's not always just a barbell, but I want to tax them in a lot of different ways, right? With different equipment, different speeds, different volumes, different intensities, like throughout the year. So they become a more well-rounded athlete, period, right?
That's important too, I guess, isn't it? Because you see all these like fancy new styles of working out, and this is the latest phase and craze, but it really comes down to just doing the basics really well and being, as you said, being a generally good athlete all around, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's so different from everybody, like from person to person. You know, some people, you know, like me, when I grew up, my mom couldn't get me to stay inside. I always was outside, and we'd climb trees and play in the creek and run around and tackle and play. You know, we do all kinds of stuff outside. So we developed just that good, playful, kind of basic human function. Right? Is an easy way to say it. And there's companies, there's guys, there's people that think that that's the deal, right? You just need body weight stuff and be able to move and flow and play touch butt in the park, right? I mean, it's like all that stuff went around when like Connor was doing all that stuff.
Yeah.
Is it wrong? No, I don't think it is at all, right? So there's some people that grew up and didn't get to do that stuff when they were young, and they do not have some basic human function. They're not able to do that, and they kind of move strange, right? It doesn't mean that they're not a good competitor. They just haven't developed that stuff. They didn't get to play when they were young.
And that's an interesting one as well, because I think that some of these little quirks that people might have actually might be a strength of theirs, because, you know, maybe they move awkward and think, like, look at Dominic Cruz, for example. He's quite an awkward guy, but because of that, then it's actually very, very effective, like, you know.
Yeah, he does a lot of stuff that everybody says don't do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right? But it's unique.
It's not bad working out for him, like, you know. So, and I see that a lot as well. You get some guys who wouldn't have like perfect technique as it goes by the book, but because of that, it works, because people maybe aren't expecting it and they're not used to it and things like that.
Yeah, and again, when you're talking about principles of strength training, individuality is one of them. I mean, you can't have a guy that's 5 foot tall that can squat and deadlift and bench press a house tell somebody that's 6'4" or 7 foot tall or whatever that they have to do everything exactly the way that he does it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's foolish, right? Everybody's different. Everybody's different. So
definitely
that
not a cookie cutter system.
Yeah, it's massive. It's huge.
Definitely.
You know, so there's a lot of different ways to squat. There's a lot of different ways to pick stuff up off the floor, push and pull and do all those types of things. Those are all methods, right? If you say barbell or kettlebell or sandbag or body weight or whatever, it's all just different methods. We're just trying to, you know, push those guys along and get them, you know, strong and powerful enough to compete and keep them healthy.
Yeah.
But we obviously, I mean, strength and conditioning, to be 100% honest, is a small piece of the puzzle, right? And you can make some dramatic changes for an individual. You can also do a lot of damage if you do it wrong.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, but there's a lot of ways to spin it, right? As long as you just keep those principles right, and you'd be good.
Definitely, yeah. What are your thoughts then, Corey, on balancing, we say, the skill work and the gym work? What do you think about that?
Like with my guys, I know that they're practicing 2 to 3 times a day, and I see them twice a week.
Okay.
I see them Tuesdays and Thursdays. I give them typically some type of conditioning homework if they're not doing other stuff for Saturdays, and that's it. And and over the years, the longer I've been doing it, the less I do.
Okay, that's
interesting.
Because
I used to do a lot. I used to try to pack it all in and beat them up and make them tired and stuff like that when I was just starting out. But I didn't, and a lot of other strength coaches have told me the same thing. They just, a lot of people didn't know. A lot of these sports are so new. They haven't really caught up with like football, baseball, that type of stuff has been around for like 30, 40 years. They've had scientists and top professionals going through it and research and stuff like that. So they understand, right? But, I see my guys a couple times a week, and with the volume of work they're doing outside of my gym, it's plenty. Like, hey guys, make sure you're sleeping, make sure you're eating good. Like, hey, cut the volume back. Like, don't be doing so much. I'm in constant contact with my top guys because it's like they need to compete at the highest level, right? A lot of times at lower levels, you can get away with a little bit of talent and still 30, 40, 50%, right?
Yeah.
A lot of guys, I don't think they know how to feel good, right? So
that's true.
I think less is more. Get a little bit of dose. Again, skills the highest priority, strength is secondary. So, if we can just get a little bit of dose and you're consistent for a few years, you're going to be a completely different athlete.
That's good. It's fantastic to see that you have that mindset, because I think a lot of people who are in their specific domain, they're naturally going to lean towards that being quite important in the whole picture of things, and as you say, when it comes down to it, the skills pay the bills, as they say, and that's what it comes down to.
I've gotten my ass whooped by guys that weren't as strong. I mean, so it's kind of, and there's a lot of big dudes that are turds when it comes into the weight, the skill stuff. So I mean, I think it's human nature to think everybody thinks that what they do is most important.
Yeah.
The world revolves around me type bullshit. But, for combat athletes, it is. It's just we're trying to add a little bit of oomph, so to speak, right? Give them they are able to physically do their sport better. That's it.
Definitely. And you touched there just kind of on keeping in contact with your guys and things like that. How important is, we say, heart rate in the morning and things like that? Is that something that you monitor regularly, or they can look after themselves in terms of recovery and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, if you say like resting heart rate in the morning, right? That's a really good measurement before anybody gets out of bed. You open your eyes, you lay there for a sec, but then if you do your heart rate first thing in the morning, and let's say your resting heart rate 70, I would say, okay, cool. Well, maybe we need to do certain types of aerobic development so that your heart becomes more efficient, so I can get you more down in the 50s, right? And then I know, like, okay, cool. Like his, for every pump that the heart pumps, right, is giving more blood. It's more efficient. It's like having a bigger motor in your car. It's very, very similar. So yeah, stuff like that is important. And these days there's a lot of technology from, Omega Wave, which I know a lot of the guys from UFC are provided with Omega Wave systems, which I've used for years, which check heart rate variability, but then also check, DC potential with the nervous system and stuff like that. Because, it's not just about heart rate variability. There's a nervous system also involved. So it measures a lot of different stuff, right? There's other ones that measure sleep. There's ones that measure, all this readiness and all this type of stuff. So it is kind of cool, right? I mean, you could tell, like, if I have 2 athletes do the same workout, it can affect them drastically different.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It is. It's crazy until you see it. And then you realize, well, oh shit, like if I have 6 people doing the same workout, 2 of them might get crushed.
Yeah.
And they might need to take the day off the next day. Other 2 people might be like, it was like no big deal at all, right? But
yeah,
if you don't know, you don't know. So I think that type of stuff is very important, and it can help guide or fine tune your training a little bit, so that everybody's healthy.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting one because strength and conditioning is one where people they want results quickly, and obviously, like you need to learn about your athlete and work with them and adjust and things like that, and obviously that takes time. Where it's a sport where people probably want quick results.
I think the easiest, the way that I've always related to it best is that strength is a skill. It is. It's really no different, right? So if when I started jiu-jitsu and got choked out by a 100-pound Japanese chick for 2 months, I was frustrated, to say the least.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I mean, she's also one of the top ranked black belts in the world, and I'm just a dumb wrestler in that world. You know what I mean? So I didn't know. I wasn't. It took a while, right? Now strength is no different. You can absolutely make progress, especially if you're new. You can make progress very, very quickly, usually, if you do it well. But again, it takes time. You see these, everybody looks at The Rock. Well, damn, dude, you're talking about a lifetime of effort. You know what I mean? That's kind of like being mad that you can't throw hands with Floyd Mayweather. It's like, come on, dude. That's his deal, So same thing.
Genetics, I guess, play a big part as well in strength training, don't they?
A lot of the mistakes all boil down to just basic human nature. A lot of people are just impatient and they want everything for themselves quick, and they don't want to work for it consistently over time. And there's a reason why certain people rise to the top, and I believe consistent effort over time is a huge factor.
We're working on a project at the moment about psychology and preparing to mentally perform at your best, and that's something that we've come across of the guys who stay consistently and keep showing up and continue to challenge themselves. They eventually begin to see that evidence of their abilities, and that's where that confidence comes from, just through that action of showing up and sticking with it.
Well, if I start Taekwondo, right, and let's say that we do 3 practices per week, right, and then over the course of 1 year, that's 150 practices every single year. But let's just say like I get lazy, or life gets in the way, or whatever. I have higher priorities outside of Taekwondo, right, which happens all the time. All of a sudden I miss one. I miss one a week. I just miss one a week. It's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
That's 50 practices in a year. You multiply that by 3 years, it's 150 practices. Then you multiply it by 5 years, that's, I don't know my math, but it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, it's enough to make a difference.
If you go to Taekwondo a couple hundred times more than me, you're gonna get me, dude, every single time.
Yeah.
You just,
people don't think of that really when it all accumulates and compounds like that.
Enormous, dude. And you think think about how fast a year goes by. You've been on Facebook and stuff like that, where I had a picture pop up the other day, and it was me and a bunch of fighters back in the day, and it was 9 years ago. And I was like, holy shit, that was 9 years ago. So it goes by like a blink. So it's like we tend to, what's the quote I've heard people say, we overestimate the short term and we underestimate the long term.
Yeah.
And it's exactly true. Like if I started rolling jiu-jitsu in Chicago before I moved to California, and that was 20 years ago. So you figure,
it didn't feel like that until you just thought
about it. If Corey would have stayed consistent with jiu-jitsu a little bit better, I'd probably be like a really high level black belt. But I didn't. I had other focuses. I had other priorities, So, I mean, it adds up fast.
Definitely, yeah.
But it's kind of undercover. It's just like all of it's true. It's the same with skill, strength, nutrition, life. It's the same, right?
Yeah, it's just getting into those habits of sticking with things. And when we talk about this whole idea of strength and conditioning, where would you like to start this? Like for us, we would have teenagers who would compete internationally from the age of 13, right up till senior. So like where would you be looking to start this strength and conditioning type of training with people?
I heard and I feel bad because I don't remember his name, but it's okay. But I heard a guy who was talking about youth development, and he's talking about how there are ages where we sprout. Right? There's traditionally a huge growth spurt between 4 and 7, and then there's another one that's between like puberty, right? Like 13-ish, right? And he says if you're not physically active in those 2 periods of time, jumping, running, playing, climbing, crawling, doing all those basic type human movements, you'll never be an elite athlete. And I was like, wow, dude, that's pretty profound. We were kind of alluding to that type of stuff earlier when we said that people, if they didn't get out and play, they kind of are odd. They kind of move strange, right? Their wiring's kind of off, so to speak, right? So, I mean, and then, so that's a huge piece of it. I think that just allowing kids to be kids is massive. And a lot of the studies and stuff like that, they're starting to realize that early specialization in one specific sport is death. Yeah. They'll mentally and physically fall apart.
Especially in a sport like martial arts, where martial art is a late specialization sport.
For sure.
You don't need to be peaking when you're 5.
No, and you got crazy parents that didn't get to do it when they were their age, so they put it on their kids. And, it's horrible. It's sad to see. But I think when you're talking about strength training, I think, we can get kids to be physically active in a lot of different ways when they're young. I think it's okay. It just depends on how much intensity, just like all of us, right? If I'm 44 years old and you're like, hey, Corey, what should I do? I have to take into consideration the same stuff. With kids, they're kids. I mean, if I let my boys just run around, they climb on everything. They throw shit, they jump, they run, they sprint, they play tag, they bounce back and forth, they're hopping on one leg. They're like constantly dicking around, you know what I mean? Let them just be kids, and then let them do a bunch of different stuff. I think kids should swim. Kids should do some kind of field sport where they haul ass everywhere and run, right? Yeah. I think on the combative side, I think, I want them to tumble and play and do all that type of stuff. But then, sure, like bears and little baby bears and stuff like that, animals, cubs, they all wrestle. Yeah. All of them. So is that okay? Yeah, hell yeah, it is okay. Like if they want to do that, let them do it. But I think they can rock climb. They can do all kinds of stuff, like to get that physical base. And the more, the better, right?
Just exploring with different movements and things, and being able to use your own body. That it's something that's underrated for sure.
Because if, for example, if you ask that kid when they get older and they've done a ton of stuff, can you do this? Like whatever it is, it's like just pick something. I have no idea. Like, you think you can throw that ball over there and whatever? Yeah, whatever. I'll try. But they're confident, and they also have the physical. Their physical library is huge from all those different types of activities. That when you ask them to do stuff, they're pretty damn good at just about everything. Yeah. Give them a little bit of time, and they'll get really good at something if they're focused on it. And I don't believe that specialization or that focus really needs to come until they're like in their late teens, personally. But like you said, there are 13-year-olds that are running around competing and stuff like that. And then the same thing comes around. Okay, what are you physically capable of doing? Where are your weaknesses? What's the rest of your training look like? All right, cool. We're going to give them a little dose where they need it. Yeah. And that's really it. I mean, it doesn't need to be complicated.
Yeah, like it's simple system really. There's nothing complicated to this. Everybody think, and you alluded to it earlier, the idea of different fighters coming up with crazy things like Tony Ferguson and things like that, and people see things and they think that there's this is what you need to be doing, but it's just stick to the basics, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's I think it's just it all comes in stages, right? If you're talking about those kids growing up and just being physical kids, I mean, shit, that's not my job.
Yeah.
Necessarily. Like, it could be like, I've had some kids that would come and see me, and now they're grown ass like 16, 17-year-old kids that are bigger than me. But when they would come to the gym and they were 8, 9 years old, I had them crawling, and I had them, you know, running and working on just basic things, and we'd climb and play, and we'd do handstand competitions, and we'd just do cartwheels, and we'd play and do like, I'm just trying to just get those like basic, like fun little kid things going. One, because they physically, they need that type of stuff, but two, because they're kids. You try to kid some kid to follow and like sit there and track his progress on his little workout card and stuff like that. They're going to be like, oh, I hate this place. But if you ask them like, hey, dude, a handstand competition, loser has to do whatever, they all start laughing and they work their ass off. They just want to play hard, and it's okay to play hard. You know, I think when they're young.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
For adults, I think a lot of people, they got too damn serious and too strict with everything. Has to be like, and they forgot how to dance and play and goof around and do stuff. And that's physically really good for especially combat athletes. You watch a lot of fighters that grew up in a culture that dances, and those dudes move and flow and do stuff way better.
Yeah, look at Izzy.
You watch somebody that didn't, and they're just like, and they're stiff. You know, they might be powerful, but they're stiff. So they lost a piece, you know?
Yeah. That's interesting for sure, because we see that a lot with, you know, even guys like Michael Venom Page and Wonderboy Thompson and guys like that who have that little bit of rhythm and a bit of tempo to their style. And everything just looks fluid and seems to come a little bit easier, like, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Like Stephen Thompson, damn, dude. That guy's his timing, when he gets his timing, whoo.
Yeah, so good.
Crushes dudes, right? So yeah, it's a big, like Lomachenko, like the boxer, right? His dad pulled him out of boxing and they did I think it was like,
seen that, yeah.
I can't remember what style of dance. I don't want to say it.
Ballet or something?
It's something similar, like it's some kind of like native, some formal dance, but then everybody's like, that dude's footwork is above and beyond everybody else. Well, why do you think that is, right? I mean, it has a huge part of it.
And they say as well that like the more coordination you have, the better your impulses are to your brain to be able to react quicker to just general things. So you might see something coming as well, and you just have a little bit of a quicker twitch. Yeah,
no doubt, 100%. Like Jose Aldo was I believe he was a professional soccer player in Brazil. How'd that dude's kicks take people out in the UFC when he was running through that featherweight division? Like he was the most violent dude on the planet. Now, but he had a lifetime of running in all directions, reacting to other people, hand-eye coordination with the ball. Like, it's stupid, dude. Like, of course it helps.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, I think that cross training and different type of stuff is a massive piece too.
Yeah, definitely. Then we said the guys that might be on the higher end of the scale, and they might have maybe 1 to 2 major things they'd like to peak for each year. How would you kind of like periodize their training and things like that? Obviously, going back to starting off with that aerobic capacity you were talking about earlier. And stuff like that.
If you're talking about an elite competitor, you got to look at their year, right? And then you have to kind of reverse engineer everything backwards. What are 1, 2, maybe 3 big things that you want to peak for? Because we can't peak every weekend.
Yeah,
it doesn't make any sense. You pick what are the 1 or 2, maybe 3 big competitions that you want to peak for that year, and you reverse engineer everything backwards, right? And depending on the ability and the assessment, obviously we'll start with an assessment with an elite athlete, and you got to find their strengths, you got to find their weaknesses. What are some, talk to the skill coach, like how are we going to develop this athlete better? What skills are we going to develop new, right? And all that type of stuff. You got to take all this stuff into consideration and then develop the program from there, right? If their weakness is aerobic capacity or aerobic power, right? We can work on that, right? If they're slow, well, then we need to work on, maybe we need to develop some strength. Are they strong enough? Yeah, they're strong enough. All right, they're just slow. All right, cool. Well, then we got to work a lot more on the power and power endurance type stuff to get them firing, like explosive, quickie, right? Like kind of fast. And then a lot more of the their priorities might go towards that quality, right? Because we don't really ever eliminate certain qualities. We just prioritize certain things at different times of the year.
Yeah.
Right.
Makes sense. Yeah.
It would kind of be like that. I mean, otherwise there's a million different variations we can go through depending on the individual and what they have access to, how many days a week, like all that type of stuff. But the general idea is the same. And even in that Fighters 5 book, I kind of allude to that. It's just kind of a lot of general principles and ideas and stuff like that I use to kind of guide my decisions, if it be in that case. So yeah, if people want that stuff, I mean, I'll give it away. That's what it's there for, you know?
Yeah. We'll definitely link that up in the video and things as well for people to have a look at, because there's some good information in it for sure. Is there anything that you'd like to kind of just to share in general about maybe what you're doing and things like that before we wrap it up? I have to say the hour absolutely flew. Thank you very much for your time. I enjoyed the chat.
Yeah, man, no doubt. I think everybody's got their own situation. They got their own questions and stuff like that. If anybody wants to reach out and ask, I'm always here to help. You know, like I said, if they want on Instagram at fightcampconditioning or fightcampconditioning.com and they do the contact us thing, I see all that stuff. I'm happy to, you know, there's 400 articles. There's over 100 podcasts on there. You know, there's programs that people can download and a lot of free resources and stuff. So, I mean, that's what it's there for. It's to educate the crowd and help move people forward. So, yeah, I mean, if people got questions, go there. If they got more, then hit me up. I'm happy to help.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Listen, I appreciate it, Corey. Thanks very much. It was a great chat.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it.
Yeah, so we'll throw everything in the description for anybody who wants to look you up anyway. And just, look after yourself and stay safe.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Corey. Thanks again for your time, yeah?
Yeah, no sweat. Have a good day.
You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.